Hello and welcome to the 105. I'm Cooper Petagna. That's 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. The same two guys, but we got a new name on this show, not the 24/7 Sports College Football Show or the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast, but the 105. And Drew, I'm going to let you take the elevator pitch. Just a quick summary on why we're called the 105 now.
Well, Coop, colleges, now they get 105 scholarships to use every year, right? Up from the 85, 105. Why this name? It encompasses what college football has become, right? Recruiting, transfer portal, name, image, likeness, all this movement. We're the two guys that's going to break it down around the year, right? Not just in season. The college football calendar isn't just a few months. It goes year-round, and we're here to break down all the news. So I love the name Cooper, love the name 105.
Phenomenal job, man. It's been a long time in the making. And guys, if you want to find us, you can find us right here on CBS Sports Network on Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, just a one-off today with the timing. And then on Wednesdays on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel at 1 o'clock Eastern as well. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. So subscribe, like to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, leave a review if you're listening via the airwaves too. But Drew, we're going to start out the same way we always do, and that's with week 4 freshman flowers. Who are we going to give our bouquet to this week? Miami fans, Drew, they've been in our ear the last couple of weeks about this youngster that you like.
OJ Frederick, I do. Cornerback for the Hurricanes. Made his first career start over the weekends as Miami traveled to Tampa to take on USF. Cooper, I thought one of the biggest weaknesses that Miami had, and I'm using that phrase lightly when we talk about the Hurricanes, because to me, this looks like a college football playoff team. I had some questions about what they were going to do out on the boundary at that cornerback position. You know, they explored the transfer portal, looked to bring in some veterans, but it's OJ Frederick who has stepped in, played 45 snaps against the Bulls, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with what Alex Galesh has got going on there at USF. They throw it around the yard. It's asking a lot of those cornerbacks. You're playing out in the wide splits, targeted just 3 times in coverage, gave up 1 catch for 6 yards. Cooper, this is a guy that finished as the number 66 ranked cornerback for us. And I keep going back to my evaluation notes on OJ Frederick. He played more wide receiver than defensive back as a senior, but he did it at St. Thomas Aquinas. That is an NFL factory there in South Florida. He played, I believe, overlapped with Jason Taylor, who's now there on the Miami staff, working with that defensive line. So I got to give my flowers to OJ Frederick. This is a kid that was committed to West Virginia. Miami made the evaluation, flipped him before his senior season. He steps in right away. And I think as the season progresses, we're only going to see more of OJ Frederick.
Props to Mario Cristobal, his staff, Lance Guidry, Dennis Smith in the front office over there. They really kind of talked about where Frederick kind of stood out during the evaluation process is when they had him at camp. We talked to Cortez Hankton, co-OC at LSU, why that is such an important piece in the evaluation process. You see right there with Miami, they were able to unearth something that maybe a lot of those teams missed. We talked about Illinois doing a good job in Florida. It's a good example of Miami doing their homework. All right, Drew, I'm going to go with a fan favorite here and a favorite of the Oyster Boys. How about Cooper Cousins, man? 44 snaps. We've been hearing about all this guy throughout the entire preseason, how much he loves ball. Played a little bit of left guard, played a little right guard against Kent State. Big blowout victory for Penn State. Did a really good job in the run game, and that's really kind of where I want to focus. I think he's got a ways to go as a pass protector, Drew. But there's been so much praise about this kid, his offensive line coach who played with the Pouncey brothers at Florida and was a 2-time captain with the Gators, compared him to Marquise and Mike Pouncey. Talk about a comparison for Cooper Cousins. That is a heck of a compliment right there. Drew, I think this kid's going to be a good one. You can obviously see where he's still kind of drinking through the fire hose a little bit, but Cooper Cousins made to play at Penn State, made to play in the Big Ten. Then we got a dude here, man, the number 2 IOL per 24/7 Sports last year.
All right, 2 questions here. Number 1, did you get your Cooper Cousins sweatshirt? I think he's got one in the NIL shop. Hey, fall is here. Temperatures are changing in Nashville. I need you walking down the block in a Cooper Cousins sweater. Number 2, does he have the widest neck of anyone in college football? When he showed up to the All-American Bowl, right, Hudson Standish, he's out there measuring the hands, the arms. I was like, can we get a neck measurement I think we're approaching 25 inches there. Coop, I love that one. I thought you were going to go with Luke Reynolds, our other favorite at Penn State, the young freshman tight end. He had like a 91.7 receiving grade from PFF, went up and climbed the ladder. I tweeted it out, the little heart emoji, him going up there and getting the football. I love that one. Coop, I'm going to go to the Big 12 now, right? Isaac Wilson, younger brother of Zach Wilson, the quarterback, became Utah's first ever true freshman quarterback to beat a ranked opponent. Utah goes to Oklahoma State. Isaac Wilson does enough to get the job done for the Utes. And Coop, you go and you kind of look at the statistical production from this game. Not great in terms of him throwing 2 picks, but he was 17 of 29, 207 yards, also ran for 41 yards. And I think the big thing here, Utah had full control of the time of possession, 42 minutes. And Utah wants to lean on that defense. Isaac Wilson named the 24/7 Sports True Freshman of the Week by Chris Hummer. I got to give him his flowers. This is a kid I saw a ton on the 7-on-7 circuit. We saw him in the Elite 11 setting. Someone I was concerned about in the terms of, okay, he turns the ball over a lot. He had the worst interception rate amongst the blue chip passers, threw 26 of them in high school. Still hasn't got rid of that. But at the same time, man, he pushes the ball down the field. Finished his senior season, Utah Gatorade Player of the Year, threw for 4,500 yards, 49 touchdowns. Also ran for 1,300 yards, leading Quarter Canyon to a 6A state title, right? We don't know what's up with Cam Rising. I feel like I'm kind of over the whole, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? They said Isaac Wilson kind of got the news at the last second that he was going to be in there. But this was a big win for Utah on the recruiting trail, right? BYU was involved. A few other programs were sniffing around. Kyle Whittingham gets it done. And I think when Wilson signed, none of us thought, all right, a month into the season, he's going to go on the road and pick up a key win when we talk about the Big 12, big picture, college football playoff contender, Utah, Isaac Wilson. Flowers to them.
Anytime, any place, Kyle Whittingham, that program, the way that they do it, it doesn't matter, Drew, whether it's a Pac-12, Big 12. This is just kind of what Utah does. Cam Rising, he's out. Isaac Wilson, same school as Jackson Dart there at Corner Canyon. Let's give a little bit of love to Blair and Gulo at 24/7 Sports as well. Big fan of Isaac Wilson. All right, Drew, you might be familiar with this name, the number 1 player on your Freaks list last year. That's Sammy Brown. Had the haircut like Brian Bosworth. He ends up at Clemson and Drew 8 tackles, team high for Clemson. Their blowout victory over NC State, 59-35. You turn on the tape, this guy was all over the place. And the good thing about Sammy Brown is our conclusion of him coming out of high school was this guy is an elite level athlete, but in terms of the linebacker, he's got a ways to go. That key and diagnosability, that is still really developing right now at the collegiate level for Sammy Brown, Drew. But for this guy to just be flying around the field with a rocket attached to his back and be doing what he's doing, he doesn't even know how to play the position yet. That's really what gets me excited about the prospect of Sammy Brown, what this guy's going to look like over the next 2 years under Wes Goodwin. They've done an incredible job there. Barrett Carter, another highly touted linebacker, going to get drafted on day 1, day 2 of the NFL draft. Drew, Sammy Brown, give me some of that stock. I know Dabo Swinney likes to talk about, buying, selling, what we're doing with Clemson. I'm buying all the Sammy Brown stock right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it last week on this show or maybe it was in one of our rankings calls. I thought Sammy Brown was going to have a breakout performance. Kobe McLeod injures his knee, in steps Sammy Brown. Cooper, you're right. Tricky evaluation in the sense that we love the athlete. He's a freak. He's a gym rat. What he does in the weight room is unbelievable. What he's done on the track for his player, his size. But he was primarily used as a running back in high school and, played some linebacker. He was the best athlete on the field. He got away with a lot of different things. I think for Clemson, the fact that they can get his feet wet this early is so key because there isn't much depth around him. They need Sammy Brown to be ready to go if they're going to contend not only for an ACC title, but a spot in the college football playoff.
All right, good old Rocky Top, big win this weekend in Norman and in Oklahoma's first SEC matchup. Tennessee, they look legit. Stick with us after the break. We're going to take a look at how Tennessee built this. Welcome back to the 105, Drew. Everything is coming up Rocky Top as we're talking about a big win for the top 10 ranked Tennessee Volunteers as they go into Norman. They get the victory over Brent Venables 25-15. We'll talk about Oklahoma, their quarterback situation a little bit later in the show. But this time we're going to talk about Tennessee and how they have built this program now ranked inside the top 5. Drew, it gets a little bit more difficult with a tougher schedule coming up. Some SEC teams, Alabama, Georgia, for the Volunteers. But Drew, I mean, Tennessee, I think you and I have been talking about this over the last couple of years. Everybody wants to talk about offense. They want to talk about the quarterback. They want to talk about the weapons on the outside. How about this defense, man? How good they have gotten year over year. You know, when you're thinking about this team from 30,000 feet and you're wondering, all right, how do we get to this place with Josh Heupel in Tennessee, that it looks like they are really one of the more formidable national championship contenders in the country? How would you answer that question?
Cuba, I think for this segment, we need to get some hard hats, right? How they built it. How did Tennessee get this done? How are they in the college football playoff conversation? You said it, defense, right? Everyone wants to talk about Heupel, the points and all that stuff, but this is a homegrown defense. They have built it through the high school ranks, Cooper. Of the 22 defenders that played 10 or more snaps or started against Oklahoma on Saturday, the Vols, 15 of them were signed from the high school ranks. One of them was a walk-on. Only 6 of them were transfers. I think that is so key in this era right now with everyone in the transfer portal trying to bring in veterans. Tennessee, the reason why they had so much success, the reason why they were able to limit that Oklahoma offense is because they got these guys in the house. They made excellent evaluations, and then they developed those players. And it really, Cooper, it goes to me to that 2022 recruiting class. It finished 17th in the country, right? So it wasn't a top 10 group, wasn't a top 15 group. But inside that class, you had James Pierce, Josh Josephs, Tyree West, and Christian Harrison. Those 4 guys combined for 15 pressures on Saturday. One of them's a safety, right? 3 of them are guys up front. Everyone wants these premium pass rushers. I mean, James Pierce, you put him on the open market. What kind of number is he going to command from another program? Same thing with Joshua Josephs, right? A guy they got out of Georgia. Tennessee recruited him out of the high school ranks, right? They went into SEC country there in Georgia. James Pierce comes from North Carolina. They get them committed. They give them reps early on in their career. 2-3 years on campus. Look at them now. They're ready to go. And that's going to be the case if they don't go to the NFL draft. I don't think Tennessee is going away. Just looking at that defensive 2-deep, a lot of parts to like.
I was reading Chris Hummer's overtime article at 247sports.com that he does at the end of every college football weekend. He made a phenomenal point about the depth of Tennessee's defensive line. I think they have one of the more deep defensive line units in the entire country. But they invested so much into that position unit because of how much that unit is on the field, along with the rest of the defense as well. You think about a high-scoring offense and how taxing that is for a defense like Tennessee's. It's good to have those bodies where you can go 10-plus deep on the defensive line and stay fresh. We saw that against Oklahoma. They got after Jackson Arnold. They got after Michael Hawkins as well. But, Drew, I'm going to talk about something we don't really talk about anymore, which I think is so important. And you got to give a lot of credit to Josh Heupel. But how about the continuity at Tennessee on their defensive staff and what they've done? You look at defensive coordinator Tim Banks. He's been there all 4 years with Josh Heupel. You go down the line, their outside linebacker coach, their defensive line coach, their secondary coach, and Willie Martinez. Josh Heupel has done a tremendous job building a program that's not only attractive for players via high school in the transfer portal, but how about for his coaches as well? They bring over William Inge, a linebacker coach from Washington, who was in the national championship the year prior with Kalen DeBoer. Those are all things that fly under the radar. But when you're trying to build a national championship program, those are the things that matter. And Drew, year over year, let's take a look at this total defense under Tim Banks. 2021, it was 99th. In 2022, it was 90th. They make a big jump in 2023 to 32nd. This year, so far in 2024, through 4 weeks of the season, the number 1 total defense in all of college football. And you mentioned they've done a tremendous job on the defensive line. They've got guys like Arian Carter at the second level. They've pieced together the secondary as well, bringing over some transfers that are ready to play. Drew, I love the way that they have built this roster. What is striking to me, the 2 teams that we have talked about roster building on this show have been Texas and Tennessee. The similarities from a defensive continuity standpoint between Pete Kwiatkowski and Tim Banks are striking. Offensively, they're striking as well. You have the franchise quarterback with both Quinn Ewers and Nico Iamaleava. They have a strong running game as well with a plethora of backs that they can throw at you. The receiver position, it's a premium position for both programs, Drew. High school level, transfer portal, look at what they've done. Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton, Chris Brazel comes over from Tulane. They have guys like Squirrel White, Kalen Webb, Mike Matthews, and Nathan Leacock, guys that we're all excited about. The tight end position, they've supplemented that well via the portal as well. Here's the big one. The offensive line, 118 combined starts, Drew, and a ton of experience. That's what you're looking for in national championship contenders. Oh, yeah, the spot starter, Lance Hurd, the former five-star that they bring over from LSU, who played in 4 games last season. So in terms of the formula here, Drew, I'm kind of looking at Tennessee, and I'm looking at Texas. And if I'm one of these teams that's trying to build a sustainable product, these are 2 teams that I'm looking at to say, wow, look at how they've done it offensively. And maybe defensively, we got to be a little bit more patient. I'm thinking about LSU over the weekend. Matt House, understandably, they go in a different direction. But how long is this going to take Blake Baker to get right there in Baton Rouge? I think Tim Banks has kind of shown you the formula here that it's going to take time. It's going to take continuity. It's going to take really good roster building as well.
Coop, I feel like for 2 years, right? So 2022, 2021, I consistently did go Vols, Ryan Callahan over there. Tennessee would get a commitment, right? They'd reach out to me. They're like, what do you think this means for Tennessee? I would consistently say they are adding a piece that can be a 2-deep guy in the SEC. Is he going to be a stud? I don't know. He has some of the traits to potentially bake into that, but you are adding depth. And I think that is what is showing right now for Tennessee. You said it. They went through their lumps, 90th in total defense. Now they're sitting number 1 overall. Coop, the other thing that I think stands out when you kind of open up the hood and look at this Tennessee roster is the fact that they have 2 former walk-ons that are actually making an impact, right? Name of the show, 105. Walk-ons could be gone. You're going from 85 to 105. I think Tennessee is one of these programs that is equipped with the extra scholarships they have coming in to turn water into wine. Think about Deshaun Bishop, the running back. That's a local product that joined them, not on scholarship. You also have the safety, Will Brooks, who started against Oklahoma. That's a walk-on. To me, that shows alignment. That shows a plan inside your personnel department, right? When they host these summer camps, when they get all these recruits on campus, yes, there's a focus on the 5 stars, the big names out there, but they are treating every single spot that they get like it's extremely valuable, and it is paying off for them, getting guys in the program, building a culture, coaching them up, and turning them into key contributors. So I think that also stands out for Tennessee. The other thing I had written down, only 2 true freshmen, I think 2 or 3 true freshmen played. Tennessee signed a really, really good recruiting class this past cycle in 2024. One we liked a lot. Had a 5-star pass rusher in Jordan Ross. You also had Mike Matthews, one of the top wide receivers, probably would have been a 5-star if it was any other year and you didn't have guys like Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams out there. They got a lot of talent, and they're allowing these guys to learn. They're not forcing them onto the field. Boo Carter, another one out there. So Tennessee, they're not in a position where they're leaning on a bunch of inexperience early on in the season.
The other thing I like, Drew, the on-field success has matched the off-field success with the uptick in recruiting. Every year, you look at Josh Heupel, 22 in his first year, 17th in his second, number 10 in his third year, 14 in his fourth year, a little bit of a step back. Right now in 2025, they rank number 7. Drew, the other thing that we haven't even talked about Faison Brandon, right? You got Jake Merklinger there. You got George McIntyre committed in 2025. 2026, you got the number 1 signal caller in the entire country, number 1 player according to 24/7 Sports. They're set up for the long term, right? And it starts with that quarterback position, this offense that more than likely is going to be in the top 20 in scoring offense year after year. I mean, it's set up pretty good, right? I don't think Tennessee's going anywhere.
If we just talked like Tennessee for, I think, 12 minutes here, and I think we said Nico's name once. I think that's a good thing if you're a Vols fan.
Well, the coolest part about Saturday was I think it was a culmination of being able to look at Tennessee, and Tennessee, obviously for good reason, people associate Tennessee high-powered offense. They think about Josh Heupel. They think about Nico Iamaleava, all those playmakers on the perimeter as well. How about that defense, man? Tim Banks getting the credit that he deserves. Hard-fought win. That type of defense with that offense, good luck stopping that. Tennessee going to be a problem for years to come. Speaking of problems for years to come, how about Arch Manning? Are you exhausted of Arch Mania yet? Not us. We're going to grade his first performance. We're also going to talk a little bit about Jackson Arnold as well. Stick around. See you in a little bit. Welcome back to the 105. Arch Madness is officially here as the youngest Manning made his debut over the weekend, leading Texas to a 51-3 victory over ULM. Drew, a little bit of an uneven start for Arch Manning, 15-29, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 INTs. The standard is very high if your last name is Manning, but I believe you have some context that sheds a little bit of light, make you feel better about the performance overall.
I do, teacher Petagna. I know you're going to have us give grades for Arch Manning's first performance, right? So I needed to get some context here, right? I went back and I looked. Last 5 quarterbacks that have gone number 1 overall in the NFL draft, what did their first college start look like? And the bad news, if you're Arch Manning, none of them threw an interception. So he threw 2 against ULM, but still, I think this is kind of notable. Caleb Williams, his first career start at Oklahoma against TCU, 18 of 23, 295 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, also ran for 66 yards and a score. Bryce Young back in 2021 when he was at Alabama, took on Miami, 344 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That one was good. Trevor Lawrence, his first career start at Clemson. Remember, they played him a little bit as a true freshman. He eventually won out. Well, he takes on Syracuse. He goes 10 of 15 for 93 yards before he gets knocked out of the game. And then the final 2, Cooper, Joe Burrow, 2018 against Miami, 11 of 24, 140 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So that was a bit of a rough one. And then finally, Kyler Murray at Oklahoma back in 2015 against South Carolina, 20 of 28, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, also ran for 156 yards in a score. So I don't know where Arch stacks up against that. But I thought, to me, I liked him taking some chances there. He pushes the ball down the field. I know, Coop, you were locked into this game. It only got a small screen for me on Saturday night. I was kind of watching Miami, wanted to check on what was going on between Oklahoma and Tennessee. What did you think?
I thought he played well, and here's the thing. I think you got to be able to look at it, dive back into the All-22 and get a better feel. But, Arch Manning was very close to having a similar stat line that he had against Texas San Antonio that kind of turned the college football world into a frenzy. 5 touchdown performance, one of those on the ground with a 67-yard run. And I guess I'll start there. I expected more on the ground. I expected him more to be schemed up into the game plan. But if you take a step back, Quinn Ewers already hurt. You got Trey Owens, a true freshman, right behind him. I understand why Steve Sarkisian doesn't want to run him. The biggest thing that stood out to me, how about this? 11 attempts over 20-plus yards. And Drew, he completed 3 of those. One, I believe, was intercepted, another one for a touchdown as well. But I think he's the most comfortable in the deep third. I think that's what Arch Manning does the best right now in regards to his development. Where he needs to get better is the short to intermediate. If you were to knock him coming out of high school, there were times where the happy feet, similar to his uncle Peyton, would get a little hot in terms of his internal clock being sped up. I think timing, anticipation, he still leaves a little bit to be desired, but all things that can improve with reps. And I think that's the most important thing to take out of this performance from Arch Manning is that he actually got the reps and the opportunity to run with the first team. The other thing about this, Drew, if he plays within himself, uses the outlet, Steve Sarkisian does a tremendous job scheming these running backs up in the passing game. He had twice where he overthrew Jadon Blue for would-be touchdowns. Arch Manning, that would be the biggest thing in terms of where he can get better is you have a very good offensive line. You have elite playmakers at every position, wide receiver, running back, and tight end. Use them as a complement. You don't have to be Superman anymore like you had to be in high school. Use the resources around you, and if you do that, then everything will take care of itself. Overall, I gave him a C. You said I was a hard teacher. My mom was a first grade teacher for 30 plus years. Maybe it runs in the family. But Drew, he's got a high standard. The good thing is he's under Steve Sarkisian. If you heard his halftime interview, it's all about not turning the ball over, playing within the structure of the offense. He can get better in those areas. I think that's very fair to say. He's not that far off. Like I said, 3 or 4 throws, you get those back. We're probably breaking this down in a very, very different light.
Coop, my mom was also a teacher. I'll say this. You gave him a C. I don't know if C's fly in the Manning household. They tuck in their shirts there. The Mannings do. Is that a C with a smiley face or a frown?
C with we got an opportunity to get better, right? And if you were Archie, if you were Peyton, and if you were Eli, that would be the standard that they would be held to as well. It's no different for Arch Manning. He was the #1 player in the country. Throw that out the window. The Manning last name, the legacy that comes with that as well. There is a lot of room to get better for Arch Manning. I think that's the exciting thing when you're breaking down Arch Manning is, wow, there is so much space for this guy to take a jump, not only from his redshirt freshman to his sophomore year, but years beyond that as well. So I'm excited to see his development, especially as he gets exposed to better competition. The biggest thing for him, do not turn the ball over. Steve Sarkisian talked about that at halftime. If he does that, he's going to be okay. Had some trouble with that during high school, but if he cleans that up, he's going to be all right. So, Drew, all in all, good performance for Arch Manning. Let's talk about another 5-star in the 2023 quarterback class, Jackson Arnold. Tough night for him. 7-16, 54 yards, 3 turnovers, an interception, costly fumble near the goal line as well. Got yanked after a lateral pass after Tennessee had given the ball to Oklahoma. You feel like Oklahoma's got an opportunity to get back into the game. Jackson Arnold just stymied any type of momentum that the Sooners had. Michael Hawkins, a true freshman, enters for him. And Drew played pretty well in spot duty for Jackson Arnold. But zooming out here at 30,000 feet, Jackson Arnold was the guy that Brent Venables in Oklahoma were so excited to build around. Dylan Gabriel goes to Oregon with Dan Lanning. Jackson Arnold gets a start. And the Alamo Bowl last year, some good, some bad. You expect that from a true freshman. But so far, not even this game. You look at starts against Houston, Tulane, very uneven performances. I think they expected more. And quite honestly, Drew, looking at Jackson Arnold and the way that he played against Tennessee, I'm fully behind Brent Venables pulling him out in favor of Michael Hawkins. It's going to be interesting to see what happens from here on out.
I get it because I don't think you could waste that defensive performance from the Sooners, right? You needed to try something different. I just hope it was the right call because now you're in a situation where Michael Hawkins, and you hear from kind of the buzz coming out of Norman, they're very high on this kid as a true freshman. Now, he was a 3-star recruit for us. Cooper, me and you saw Michael Hawkins at the Elite 11 finals. You know, we never thought to kind of really dig back in and see if he should have a spot in the top 247. But when I was watching on Saturday night, I was like, whoa, hey, did we get this thing wrong? You dig into Michael Hawkins, what he was able to do as a senior, led his team to the Texas 5A state semifinals. He accounted for over 4,000 yards of total offense. He threw for 59 touchdowns, only 3 INTs. He's got a 4.16 time in the short shuttle, a 4.6 in the 40-yard dash. I'm a little nervous about where we had him ranked, but I think for Oklahoma, you mentioned that offensive line. You mentioned the struggles with Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold, in 4 games, Cooper, he has turned the ball over 9 times, 6 INTs, 3 lost force fumbles. I think he is just struggling it. He's kind of seeing some ghost out there. You want to talk about and compare this to the NFL? How about Bryce Young in Carolina, right? The confidence is absolutely shot. And then Michael Hawkins, he comes in from the bullpen. He's able to run around a little bit. And maybe that's what Oklahoma needs. My biggest question about them coming into the season was that offensive line. They lost 4 guys to the NFL draft. The 5th offensive lineman, he transferred to Missouri. It is not a formidable unit. Now, they went up against a really good defense, but they need a guy that can get away from the pressure and utilize his legs. Jackson Arnold, he's mobile. He can do the RPOs. Michael Hawkins is a little bit different. He's got that lower body twitch to get out of trouble.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look back at Jackson Arnold, you and I have talked about this. We thought he was one of the more day one ready collegiate quarterback prospects coming out in the country just 2 years ago, along with Dante Moore. So far, Drew, we haven't seen that poise, that composure that we saw at Denton Guyer. This is a guy that completed upwards of 67% of his passing attempts as a senior there, playing high school ball, highly competitive high school ball there in Texas. Michael Hawkins comes in. He's able to give them a jolt, sees the field, balls out quick. And the thing that was so important for Michael Hawkins, and the biggest contrast from Jackson Arnold, he was accurate. He was on time. He kept them on schedule ahead of the sticks. Jackson Arnold was missing layups after layup, which is something we never saw out of him in high school. It just goes to show a little bit of pressure at that offensive line. He'd been feeling it for the last couple of weeks. The moment felt too big for him. Michael Hawkins, the opposite case. Everything just kind of slowed down. Oklahoma got their feet under him. Drew, I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Hawkins is the guy that they turn to here the rest of the season. Makes you think. Jackson Arnold, transfer portal. I know it's early. Jeff Lebby, he's at Mississippi State. We'll see what happens there. Guys, stick around. We got studs and duds coming up next. Welcome back to the 105, our favorite segment of the show. Studs and duds, week 4 college football. Drew, I don't think there was any shortage of options for duds. Unfortunately, in college football, there's not enough time in this segment to talk all about them. But let's start with the positive, and let's start with that Tomahawk war chant there in Florida State. It's been all negative so far. Finally, a little bit of a reason to rejoice as they get the win over Cal in their first ACC game. Not their first ACC game, their second. Obviously, they play Georgia Tech. But that Florida State defensive line, have they awoken, Drew?
I think so, Cooper. Look, everyone that was questioning FSU's defensive line and all the talk about them being one of the most expensive units in all of college football and all the NFL scouts drooling on them. Well, I hope they watch that game against Cal, because that unit took over. They caught so much flack, and deservingly so, but they deserve some praise for the efforts. They were the difference in that 14-9 win in Tallahassee. The Seminoles finished with 26 pressures on the night. Joshua Farmer, Pat Payton, Marvin Jones Jr., they combined for 6 sacks, by far the best game of Marvin Jones Jr.'s career. 84.8 pass rushing grade from the folks at PFF, 13.3 win percent rate. This is a guy that a lot of Florida State fans have kind of circled. Hey, he's loafing a little bit here. This guy was a former blue chip recruit. He was at Georgia. Where is Marvin Jones? We had a strip sack down the stretch for the Seminoles. Unit looked good, and that is the strength of Florida State's team. I think if you're Mike Norvell, you can hang your hat on the fact that they haven't given up, right? It was a dire situation. They could have easily moved to 0-4, but those guys got the job done. I thought Patrick Payton looked like a guy that's going to play on Sundays, and I thought Marvin Jones Jr. did as well. So FSU's D-line, my first stud.
Good to see Florida State get off the map. They needed it. Drew, if they are going to continue this uptick throughout the 2024 season, that unit is going to have to be dominant offensively. Still a little bit of a slugfest trying to get things going there under DJU and Mike Norvell. All right, my stud about Khalil Mullings, running back Michigan. Drew, if you watched that game against USC, Big Ten, CBS game of the week, felt like an instant classic, and I loved it. And Khalil Mullins was one of those guys that took over this game. You thought Donovan Edwards was going to be the guy coming into this season for the Blue, but it's obviously Khalil Mullins. He leads the team in rushing his second consecutive week with over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. He does that against a USC team that was honestly all they were looking for was trying to find a way to stop the run. Because if you look at Alex Orji, what he did, 7-12 for 32 yards, it's not like this was a multi-dimensional offense that could rely on their passing attack. Drew, he came through when they needed him most, averaged 9.4 yards on the ground. I can see it already with Khalil Mullings. I've seen the NFL scouting community. They're coming around on him. He's starting to get love. He's starting to get momentum. Khalil Mullings, guess what? 13 games as a sophomore with Michigan, played linebacker and was on special teams. The Braylon Allen comps, I can see him coming from a mile away. Is that fair?
Isn't Braylon Allen the one that tweeted out after his first big performance there on the NFL, hey, I went in the 4th round because all these guys wanted me to run in my underwear. Coop, I do think it fits. And he was the difference. That was an awesome game. You asked if I was watching. Of course I was. It was on the mothership there, CBS Sports. I can't believe Michigan found a way to do it, and it was the long runs for Mullings. Really exciting, I think. And I came out of that game feeling good about USC. You want to talk about someone getting off the mat? I mean, the first half didn't go well. They rally back. Will Johnson's pick 6. Not ideal for the Trojans, but they still are able to at least have a chance to win it in the end. Coop, that is a great one. Michigan, they always have someone that feels like they wear different hats in different roles, and then they kind of emerge as seniors. So I like that. I'm going to go with my first dud, and it's also a running back, sticking with the running back theme here. Oklahoma State's Ollie Gordon. Let's put him on a milk carton. Where is this dude? In the loss to Utah, 11 carries for 42 yards. That's good enough for 3.8 yards per touch. Through the first 4 games of this season, the reigning Doak Walker Award winner has only eclipsed the 50-yard mark rushing once. That was against South Dakota State. I'll be fair here. In 2023, that breakout campaign, he was under the 50-yard mark in his first 3 games, and he ripped off 6 straight of 120+. But something just seems off here in Stillwater for him to not be going. A ton of NFL scouts were there at the game, most of them to see Ollie Gordon, but he seems to be in a bit of a funk.
It's a little odd coming off I would say, pretty notable offseason as well. Some offseason trouble. Obviously, got the DUI. I don't know if that plays into it. We have not seen the Ollie Gordon that we saw last year. We'll keep an eye on that. That's an unfortunate dud. How about this one for me? Dud. Hank Brown, Auburn, quarterback. You could just put the dud on the quarterback situation on the Plains regardless outside of Hank Brown, but he earned his second consecutive start. How about this? 7-13, 52 yards, 3 INTs. He then got pulled for Peyton Thorne, the man that he was set to replace. Auburn loses to Arkansas. Drew, this is tough, and I'm thinking ahead. We continue to talk about this. I talked about Jackson Arnold, what that could potentially look like if Michael Hawkins unseats him. What if Auburn doesn't get this right at the quarterback position? What about Cam Coleman? What about Perry Thompson? What about Malcolm Simmons? What about Bryce Kane? There is an elite level of talent in that receiver room right now, Drew, that is ready to play and ready to make contributions. Hugh Freeze is going to be under a lot of pressure to get that quarterback room right. They have decided to kick the can down the road, not invest in that position. Thought Peyton Thorne was good enough to kind of get them through the season, maybe win 8-9 games. That is not the case. Drew, it has kind of halted any type of momentum that they have had when you look back at Auburn and the direction that they're trending, especially from a recruiting standpoint. Auburn's one of those teams 2 to 3 years from now. You really like their outlook. Year 2, this is not at all what I think you and I really kind of had in mind, the quarterback position falling on their face in a big-time way.
Auburn's quarterbacks are taking up residency on the duds. They lead it. I think they've been mentioned twice here through the first 4 weeks of the college football season. Coop, I got one more stud and wanted to slide this one in here. How about Illinois, and more specifically so, the Illini's recruiting efforts in the Sunshine State? I was watching that game on Friday night. They beat Nebraska in overtime. Excellent kind of battle. And I couldn't help but notice, I'm a guy that lives in Orlando. My job is to scout and rank all of the talent in the state of Florida. It's a lot. Illinois continues to make me look silly. First touchdown of the game, Pat Bryant. He reels in a long score. That was a 3-star prospect for me. You had Dennis Briggs, the defensive tackle there in the middle. Torrey Cox with that nasty one-handed interception where he stole it from the wide receiver in the corner of the end zone. You had Seth Coleman, the edge rusher, Gabe Akis, the edge rusher. All these guys were not blue-chip prospects coming out, but they all look like future NFLers there because Brett Bielema and his staff, they continue to develop them. And Cooper, I went and I looked past 3 NFL drafts. Illinois has had 6 players that they signed from the Sunshine State selected. 2 of them have gone in the first round. We're talking about Kirby Joseph, Devon Witherspoon, Sidney Brown, Chase Brown, Jerzon Newton. Illinois has it figured out in the state of Florida. If they offer a prospect, I think if you're any other school around the country, you should be checking out who they're targeting in the state of Florida.
I was getting ready to say the same thing. I mean, if you're Miami, Florida State, I'd be keeping a close eye on what Illinois is doing in the Sunshine State. Drew, like that observation there. If you're watching Studs and Duds and you are probably thinking, how did you not talk about North Carolina giving up 70 points to James Madison? We hear you. That's coming up next, guys. Stick around. North Carolina, Mack Brown in trouble? Welcome back to the 105. North Carolina, tough day in Chapel Hill on Saturday. They lost 70-50 to James Madison, a team that defeated Gardner-Webb 13-6 the week before. Drew, I have no idea where to start with this with North Carolina. Mack Brown, 73 years old. We've heard some stories about what happened in the locker room after the game, him talking about potentially resigning, stepping away from the program, then going back on that a little bit later in the evening. The players were not made available to the media as well after Saturday's loss. North Carolina, Drew, is a program that I have such high hopes for. You think back to 2022, they were ranked number 11 in the 24/7 Sports composite team rankings. In terms of recruiting, Drew, this is a team that I think is prime and ready to go with the right vision, the right leadership. So far, under Mack Brown, you can say that he's done some good things. I'd get on board with that. I know we're going to talk about Drake May and Marion Hampton, some of the other top-tier talent that has come through Chapel Hill. But, Drew, this loss at the hands of JMU in the Sun Belt, a group of 5 team, giving up over 50 points at halftime and then letting them score 70 points overall, the most ever given up in North Carolina history. This has just got to be a dagger, in my opinion, for Mack Brown. I don't see how he recovers from this, especially this is not the first type of sequence we've seen where Mack Brown has maybe talked about stepping away. It seems like it's been year to year. This one ought to do it, in my opinion, regardless how the rest of the season plays out.
Fun fact, Cooper, I was at that East Carolina, North Carolina game back in 2014. I was in the stands working for the Rocky Mount Telegram. Hey, I'm not trying to make excuses for Mack Brown. I do think we need to bring up the fact, hey, Drake May's gone. Max Johnson you bring as a transfer portal option quarterback. He gets hurt in the opener, and it's kind of been a changing of the guard ever since. They haven't figured it out there. But I do think that speaks to the issue with Mack Brown. How do you not have a plan? How do you look so unprepared against a group of 5 opponent? Cooper, I thought like the bottom line was broken when I saw that James Madison ran up 50 in the first half. It just looked like a complete failure on all levels, and Mack Brown has taken that very personally. You go to, Inside Carolina, you kind of read the comments about what have been said. I don't know what the future holds there for UNC, but I think if this were to come open, it is going to be one of the most coveted jobs out there. And I know you want to kind of touch on that, but this is in a recruiting hotbed, right? You can get NFL talent there. You can get NFL quarterback Sam Howell. Like we said, Drake May, they will come to Chapel Hill. I'm expecting a little bit more out of the Tar Heels.
It's a sneaky job. We talk about NC State, we talk about Clemson, obviously the appeal of those jobs. North Carolina, Drew, I think is in a unique position to capitalize there, especially in the ACC. I mean, if you're one of these young, dynamic coaches, North Carolina would be the job that I would have circled because you mentioned it. The talent is rich in that area, not only North Carolina, but you look at the DMV, the Virginias as well, the surrounding area. You can get into Georgia. Man, I'm kind of like salivating at the idea of what North Carolina can be. The same way I talked about Arch Manning and that standard. I think if you're a North Carolina fan, it's okay to dream big. This program can get to a point where they are recruiting just outside of the top 10 every single year. So we'll see what happens with Mack Brown. He's certainly earned his keep, 73 years old, like I mentioned, but 70 points to JMU. I don't see how you recover. So we'll keep an eye on the Tar Heels. Guys, we appreciate you joining us for the first ever episode of the 105, and we look forward to seeing you more in the future. You can find us on Mondays right here on the CBS Sports Network at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, and on Wednesday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. You can also find us wherever you find your podcasts. And if you're listening over the airwaves, guys, make sure to leave a review. And if you have any questions, that's a good place to do it as well. For Andrew Ivins, I'm Cooper Petagna. We appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you next time.